mortgage educators and compliances. So shout out to them. So give credit where credit is due. So we're
Yes,
just
ma'am.
helping our clients to see better and, you know, really wrap their hands around it. Because I know this was a new thing for me when I was getting licensed, like, oh, wow. So I really think it's very important for our clients to understand how it works if they decide to go this route.
Yes. And I would say before we even get into the math, I want everyone to know what's helped me with the math going through this is to know that whatever the initial interest rate is, like, forget about that once you get to the first adjustment. With the first adjustment, just pay attention to what is talking about there. Okay, because it's going to basically replace what the initial was. Because that gets very confusing. You think I need to add the initial to the first, right? No, that's not
Right.
the case. You'll see that it just takes the place of the initial. And I think grasping that concept ahead of time makes this math a little bit easier and not as confusing. So just putting that out there. That's going to make more sense
Yes.
in a second here. So let's go over the problem really fast. It says a borrower has an initial interest rate of 2.25%. The margin is 1.5%. Remember, the margin is the fixed thing from the lender. You were talking about earlier, right, Bathsheba? The lender. 1.5%.
Yes.
And the index.
The lender fee.
Okay, the lender fee, right. And then the index is the SOFR, as we've been talking about. The ARM has a 328 interest rate caps, and the SOFR, as it's abbreviated, at its first adjustment is at 1%. To follow its second adjustment is at 3.25%, and the third adjustment is at 9.5%. So we are going to be talking about the solution to this. Like, what are going to be the interest rates through these adjustments? That's essentially what we're trying to solve for. And before we go into that, we need to understand, what does it mean by 328? You see that? You're
Yes.
like, number
You're like,
slash.
what is that? This arm has an interest cap rate of 3, 2, and 8. And that's 3 to 8 is the percent. 3%, 2%, 8%. The first three represents the amount of interest rate can increase or decrease in the first adjustment. So on the first adjustment, it can either go up 3 or down 3. The second number, in this case is 2, is known as the subsequent adjustment. So on the second time it adjusts this, it can go up 2% or down 2%. This is the cap that represents how much interest rate can increase or decrease in an adjustment period that follows the first adjustment. So after the first adjustment, up 3 or down 3, then the next set will either go up 2 or down 2. And the third, in this case, is the 8, is known as the lifetime cap, adjustment cap. This cap limits the interest rate increase over the life of the loan. So it cannot go up or down no more than 8% on the last third adjustment.
The first adjustment cap is the first number. That's a 3. Technically, all of these are percentages, right? So 3%. And that's what the very first adjustment is. So once we get past the first adjustment, basically it's 2.8.
Right.
And now, when the first adjustment happens will vary depending on the arm. We have the example here, but in other cases, maybe it's 3 years, maybe it's 5 years, like maybe it's every year, right? You have to pay attention to that.
10 years.
Right?
Sometimes
yeah, exactly. Up to 10 years, right? It's crazy.
Yes.
A whole decade. And the subsequent adjustment cap is basically every adjustment after the first. So not just the second, it could also be the third, the fourth, the fifth, how many adjustments you're willing to stick around for.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the final number is the lifetime adjustment cap. So this is the maximum for the term of the loan.
Right.
Never go past that lifetime cap, right? So what we're going to do next is we're going to look at the math behind this in this example. The question it asks in the case study here is, what is the interest rate at the first adjustment, then the second, and then the third, as we were talking about earlier, right? And it reads, this arm has an interest rate caps of 328, just like we finished talking about. It says to solve this problem, we need to first look at what the interest rate is by adding the margin and the index. So in the problem there, we saw that the margin is 1.5%, and we saw that the index was referenced for the first adjustment is 1%. Okay, so those are the two numbers we need to pay attention to first.
Right.
So then it goes over and it identifies exactly what I just mentioned there. So margins at 1.5%, first adjustment's 1%. So the two numbers need to be added together. So you add 1.5 plus the 1% to get a 2.5%. I'm going to go ahead and get that on the screen here for us. So that's our first math for solving this is 1.5% the margin, as we see up here, plus the 1% SOFR, or the index in this case. And we add those together. And of course, simple math, 2.5%, right?
And this is our fully indexed rate. We needed to fully indexed rate. So we always have to find
Yes.
that first.
Yes, that is what this result is. Fully indexed rate for the first adjustment, it says.
The margin is always fixed. That is the profit that the banks get.
Right.
And the SOFI is adjusted. Remember, we can find that in the New York Federal Reserve, and they do the average of the 30. So you can look that up right now. It's a real thing. And that's what is always jumping up and down.
That's right. That's our wild card, if you will. Now, it does mention, it says, remember the adjustment caps of 3, 2, 8, as we've seen in the problem. The first adjustment cannot increase or decrease by more than 3% from the initial rate, as Bathsheba was talking about earlier, right? The initial rate was 2.25%, as we've seen in the problem. And the new fully indexed rate at the first adjustment is 2.5%. Since the interest rate at the first adjustment is 2.5 and not 3, right? It's below 3. The cap does not kick in. In other words, we do not breach the cap, right? We're below the cap. So therefore, it's an acceptable adjustment. And the interest rate at the first adjustment will be 2.5%. So instead of 2.25, it changes to 2.5. Yeah, it took the place of, see what I said earlier? Instead of adding 2.25 to 2.5, like I thought.
Me too.
Yeah,
me too.
Yeah, see, I thought it was 4.75. I'm like, damn,
yeah, me too.
that's what rates are not for me, But no. It takes the place of. So now it's 2.5. So once the first adjustment kicks in, whenever that is for this particular example, it will be 2.5 instead of 2.25. So it just went up by 0.25, right? That's what it's going to look like.
Right.
To the line. So we move on to the second part here. It says, well, hey, what's the second adjustment though? Okay, what is that? All right, so we're going to be in here. We say first, we take the margin again, which is 1.5%. Then we take the SOFR index at the second adjustment, which according to the problem is 3.25%, and we add those together to get the new fully indexed rate for the second adjustment. You just get that on in our whiteboard here. Hold on a second. Let me just.
This is the past the fixed interest rate phrase. Now, this is where you are when every year your arm is adjusting. So every year they're going through this, and well, not every year, every month.
Oh, well,
because you
depending on the arm. Depending on the arm.
Depending on the arm, So sorry, it could be, it's every year. So every year you're gonna get for the 12 months is at 2.5, and then next year it could be at 4.75 now, your interest rate, because they're always checking the arm, the 30-day, they're always checking the SOFI index and adding that to the margin and checking to see, are they at the cap or are they too below, and whatever number that matches is the one they're going to pick. So just wanted to add that. Yes.
On that note, I do want to mention that once we got to the first adjustment, so like the first part of the problem we just pasted earlier, that's when the army part of this loan took effect. That was the first adjustment. Every adjustment is going to be what the arm ebb and flow is going to feel like if you actually go beyond the fixed period. So here we are in the second. My goodness, they stuck around for the second. Must be a good loan.
They
have a 1.5 plus a 3.25% according to the problem, right? So we just took the margin again, 1.5. Remember, it's fixed, like Bathsheba said. It never changes. And then plus 3.25%, because in the problem it says that, hey, the index adjusts on the second time around 3.25. So the fully indexed would be a simple math equation. 1.5 plus 3.25 equals 4.75%, which is the fully indexed rate. Now, going to continue what it talks about here, just so we've got the full experience. It says, let's put put it to the test using our adjustment caps of 3, 2, 8. Again, going back to that. On subsequent adjustments, the interest rate cannot increase or decrease by more than 2%, as Bathsheba explained eloquently earlier, from the first adjustment, right? So it says our interest rate at the first adjustment was 2.5%. Let's take the rate at the second adjustment, which we've determined is 4.75%, and subtract the interest rate of the first adjustment. So now we're going to subtract 4.75 from 2.5, and we're going to get a result of 2.25%. Okay, so that's what we're doing there in the math. So just so you have a visual as I continue onward here. It says this means the interest rate adjusted more than our cap. It has exceeded now. And in the first example, it was below, right? Now in this one, it has exceeded because we're at 2.25. That's more than 2, right? That's
more than 2%.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We breached the cap, right? So now we take the interest rate at the first adjustment, 2.5%, and add our cap to the second adjustment, which is just going to be the 2. Because it's beyond, right? So we cut off the 0.25 and say, okay, it's 2. That's the cap, right? That's as high. That's our ceiling. 2. So now we're going to add 2.5% to the 2%, and we should get 4.5%. So there you go. There's the math so far. So there we have it. So on the second adjustment, guess what? Instead of, where was that before? 2.5. Now that's changing to 4.5. We had to make sure we did the math because we had to make sure we achieved the cap. That was the importance. Otherwise, you could just say, well, it just went up by 2%. I mean, yes, we're correct. But why? This is the why. Okay? It's very important to know because it might not always be that simple.
It would have been 4.75, but that is above the cap that blew the roof off, and that would be too much. So we went to what we said we're going to be, to the 4.5.
So hopefully this is making sense so far. Again, you can always rewind the video if you need to. Make sure that it makes sense. It's very important. Loan officers, this is probably the most complicated math you will have to deal with. Hopefully, other than certain percentages for other things.
Yes.
It's only that. Okay. All right. So next up here, let's talk about the final one, the third adjustment at 9.5 on that SOFR, SOFR. If my pronunciation of that is bad. It says, what's the adjustment for the third time around? Well, it says first we need to take that margin again. Hey, hello, 1.5%. Remember, consistent, right? Then we take the index of the third adjustment, which we know is 9.5% according to the problem. And now we add them together. So we have 1.5 plus 9.5, these are percentages, equals 11%. Get that.
And can you see how it just, the Sophie keeps moving up and down, and this is real life. It will continue. It will move up and down like that.
Yeah. In this particular example, it's just moving up, but it can move up and down. That's this is true. And more real life, maybe it goes down. So maybe that's the reason they stuck around for the interest, because they were like, "Oh, my money's saying it's gonna go down," and then 9.5. Sorry, better luck next time, guys. I just anyway, should have refinanced. So yeah, let's see here. So we got. We're going to go continue the problem here, right? So that's our fully indexed is 11% on the third adjustment, okay? So it says this is where the lifetime cap would kick in, all right? So that's that 8 at the end, right? Remember our caps are 3, 2, 8. The 8 represents the maximum amount of the interest rate can increase over the life of the loan, okay? Over the life of the loan. That's why it's called the lifetime cap. Because remember, ARMs can even do month adjustments. So it's not just years. You can do it every month. So I'm like, whoa, I hope that interest is really low. Like, that's really crazy.
Yeah,
every month.
Big risk.
It's super risky, yeah. So cut it off before that for sure. I would recommend. See here, to figure out what the interest rate cap would be, we take the initial rate, which is 2.25%. So now this is where the initial rate actually comes in handy when we're talking about the lifetime cap, okay?
Yes.
2.25%, and then we're going to add the 8%, okay? That is the lifetime cap. So initial plus the lifetime cap. So 2.25% plus 8% equals 10.25%, right? Now, why that's important, right? Because it's like, well, that's nice. This number would be the interest rate cap of the entire life of the loan. So 10.25%, guess what? We will never exceed 10.25%. Okay? That's why that's important.
Ceiling.
That
we were
is
talking
the
about
ceiling.
in the beginning.
Yeah, that's the definitive ceiling of ceiling,
Yeah.
right? That's like the ceiling of the ceiling.
Yes, and this is the amount that we want to, like David and I were saying, this is the amount that you want to project in your mind. Like,
Yes.
can I afford this? If it gets to this price, will I be able to afford this plus my groceries, plus my insurance, plus my taxes?
Yes. So this is a beautiful thing right here. This is a simple way of seeing it, right? You look at the arm, you say, well, this is what my loan officer said. I said, great. So let's take a look at what's the initial and what's the lifetime. Add them up, find that percentage. Now, use that to determine, based on your loan amount, can I afford this monthly? Can I afford this? If the answer is yes, then maybe it's a viable option.
Yes.
But you also have to soul search a little bit inside you. What are my goals? What do I
Yes.
want to do? What's my
Yes.
risk tolerance? And then
Yeah.
ultimately using all those factors, is this a good decision for me? Okay.
Yeah.
If you can't answer that as a yes, you need to keep thinking about it. You need to keep praying on it. Whatever you do,
Yeah.
meditate on it. Talk to professionals, get their opinions on it. Talk to your friends, talk to your whatever
Talk
it
to
takes.
us.
What's
Call
that?
us.
That's right. Call
Talk
us
to
up.
us.
Give us a
Call
ring.
us.
If you're in Texas, California, or Florida at the recording of this, so we may have more states later, give us a call.
Yes.
We'll have more information towards the tail end of this video for exactly that. Promises,
Yes.
promises. Okay, so we got our that's really useful math to determine if an arm is a good fit for you or not. So I really love, great point there, Bathsheba. Let's go ahead and move along with the problem here. So we determine, hey, interest rate cap for the entire life of the loan is 10.25%. Great. On our third adjustment, the new fully indexed rate is 11%, as we determined a little bit ago. This is over the cap limit, right? 11%, sorry, is greater than 10.25. Yes? So,
Yes.
but it says, remember, this also exceeds the subsequent adjustment cap of 2%. Okay? So this means our interest rate cap would come into play for the third adjustment. So in other words, it's going to be 2 again. So we're going to take the 4.5%, which is the second adjustment, as you can see there on the screen, and we're just going to add it another 2%, which will give us a result of what the true adjustment will be for the third adjustment of 6.5%. Okay. Kind of wish it went up and down in this example. That would have been kind of cool.
Yes, it'd been
But,
nice.
you know, it is what it is. And this could very well be actually better to know, because it's like, well, what if it just continues to go up? What would that actually look like?
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So there you go. There you have it. The answers to this case study. And you can use the same logic we had together on this in the real world. Okay.
Yes.
The numbers will be vastly different, obviously, but you'll know, hey, the margin's consistent. Cool. I know what my initial is. Cool. Take note of those things. Those things aren't changing. Cool. You'll always have them.
Right.
Now, the only thing you will have to pay attention to, as we've mentioned periodically throughout this entire video, is the index, or in this case, the SOFR, or whatever index your arm is referencing. So pay very close attention to that. Figure out what that percentage is, and then you have all the things you need in order to really figure out how is this impacting this particular loan. You know, you can use it as case study. So I hope that made things really easy for everyone.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed this because it made it.
I enjoyed it too.
Yeah, right? It all
Yeah.
makes sense now.